William, and I'm a licensed and board certified creative arts therapist. At this point, I have more than 18 years helping adults struggling with insecure attachment styles find loving insecure relationships or cultivate loving insecure relationships. I also have trainings and certifications in Reiki, level 2, EFT tapping, hypnotherapy, somatic-informed trauma-informed somatic therapy. I'm certified as a ketamine-assisted psychotherapist, and I also have mentorship in shamanic approaches to healing, as well as with internal family systems theories. I'm also a two-time contributing author and editor for textbooks written in the field of attachment and creative arts therapies. And I've written articles in such publications as The Good Man Project, Choosing Therapy, Up Journey, The Elephant Journal, and Tiny Buddha, to name a few. I've also had the privilege of working with more than 6,000 clients and students to help them experience more love and happiness in their relationships. But really, it has been my own experiences as a child of divorce and then a single mom with rocky romantic relationships that led me to what I believe to be the profound benefits of understanding attachment styles in relationships, and then opening up to the more deeply profound spiritual lessons and benefits that evolve from healing our insecure attachment by way of healing the inner child. And so if you're here, then I suspect that you are a successful, resilient, empathic, and growth-oriented person who also wants passionate and secure relationships without confusing mixed signals, emotional unavailability, or needing to compromise your needs and settle for a lack of chemistry. And you might have tried talk therapy and counseling or various self-help workshops and online courses. Maybe they provided a lot of insight, but ultimately there was no real change in how you felt or what you were attracted to or who you were attracting into your experience, or the dynamics that you wanted to change in your relationship. And so this might leave you feeling kind of discouraged, hopeless, confused, or frustrated. You may have even started to believe that experiencing a loving and soulfully intimate relationship is either unrealistic or it is just not for you. Now, I believe it does not have to be this way. Soul-shaking relationships are more than possible, and I believe that they are probable when we apply what I have learned to our personal growth journeys and intimate relationships. And so what have I discovered that we're going to be talking about here today? So I call this the PATH framework. So this is a framework that is for highly capable and conscientious individuals who want emotionally healthy and secure relationships, whether they are partnered or single. And this framework is so powerful because it's going to move us beyond talk therapy and counseling or manipulative dating strategies or other types of sleazy gimmicks. And instead, we define secure relationships as an extension of the connection that we have to our own core spiritual self. And so this allows us to step into what I call soul-centered security, and that is by way of healing the inner child. And so what can you expect in our workshop here today? So this workshop is hosted in celebration and promotion of my Hungry Love Masterclass, which is a live online group coaching experience to help successful individuals cultivate soulfully secure relationships by connecting to their inner child. And we do this using a shamanic approach to art therapy and energy healing techniques. You do want to make sure that you have some drawing materials and something to draw on with you for this presentation. We're going to define what it means to accomplish soul-centered security, and this is by way of the inner child. I'm going to walk you through an experiential exercise that takes you through this PATH framework, which is all about connecting to the inner child with the intention of unburdening it. And we're going to do a guided exercise to connect with the inner child and harmonize with the spirit some new, more expansive and affirmative beliefs that we're going to establish in our time together. So let's start by defining this term, soul-centered security. Soul-centered security is really transforming our attachment styles through this profound lens of spirituality. And so this is really accomplishing secure attachment by recognizing our spiritual curriculum in this lifetime. That means that our relationships are really profound mirrors reflecting this internal alignment between our conscious awareness and the essence of our spirit. And so once we have reoriented our attachment needs to what I'm going to call the core spiritual self, instead of towards people, circumstances, and other things that we can't control. Now we are inhabiting that sense of soul-centered security. That means that shared exchanges of energy and support and emotional care and relationships stem from a place of free will and generosity rather than from a place of ego or survival concerns or attachment anxiety. Now, inhabiting this sense of soul-centered security doesn't mean that we have healed all our insecurities, right? There's this misconception about what it means to be secure. Well, I'm an anxious person, and so because I worry a lot, that makes me anxious, but secure people must not worry. So when I stop worrying, then I'll be more secure, right? But the difference is not in the worry. The difference is how identified an anxious person might be with their worry versus how unidentified a secure person could be with the same worry. So being secure doesn't mean that the worry isn't there, but it does mean that you have more free will and spaciousness inside, kind of buffering its effect. So we question the worry. We say, hey, wait, let's do a little reality checking before we go making some assumptions that could make us feel pretty rotten about ourselves. So in other words, we don't take it all so personally, but there is more to that story. Now, let's say that you have become aware of how much you're worrying. And instead of being able to create spaciousness around it, now you start worrying about how much you're worrying. So this is what I call a double trouble. And so at that point, acquiring more information is really just going to feed the beast, because sometimes intellectual insight and understanding can actually make you feel worse if you don't know how to intentionally move that kind of mental energy so that you can transmute it on the body level. And this is where I believe healing the inner child comes in. So the inner child is this unconscious aspect of our personality that has been disconnected for whatever reason from our spiritual core, and sometimes I call it our higher self, due to, let's say, an attachment injury. And so these early injuries, they don't have to be severe. In fact, a lot of clients that I have worked with grow up with what they consider to be normal childhoods and still feel a level of anxiety or insecurity because a younger part of them just got confused and disconnected at some point. And so when the inner child is in distress, it can manifest in specific struggles in relationships. They can be intense kind of signs, like intense emotional reactions to seemingly minor events. There can be a pervasive fear of abandonment, things like constant worry, struggling to maintain our boundaries, or choosing unsuitable partners and then experiencing an intense attraction to them. Now, on the other hand, these signs can be more subtle and hidden. There can be more of a generalized feeling of being stuck or frustrated and really just not knowing why. Now, in this case, there can be these other characters in our subconscious mind and emotional body that kind of satellite around that inner child, and they aim to protect it and to hide it at all costs. And so these protective characters are very smart and they're very capable at their jobs. So these protector parts, they take all your hard-earned knowledge and insight and intellectual understanding, and they repackage it around what might be stuck energy so you don't recognize where is that resistance coming from and why. So in other words, they use your best traits to keep you safe, right? But in doing so, oftentimes what happens is our strengths become our weaknesses. So on this slide here, I have a few examples of what we might call the strengths of high performers, but how sometimes they can get us stuck in a spin cycle. So for example, if you have high standards, that can be a wonderful thing, unless it is stemming from a habit of self-criticism. So usually when we are searching for the perfect partner, it's also leaving very little room for our own imperfections. Or maybe we consider ourselves to be gracious, right? Well, gracious can be an admirable trait unless that means that you deflect all compliments and reject your own just rewards, right? Then perhaps we're very successful in our careers. Well, career success too is a wonderful thing, unless you don't know who you are without it. And so using career achievements as a primary source of identity and validation we can use this sometimes under the guise of supporting other people, but sometimes we're holding on to it because we don't actually know who we are without it, right? And closely tied to that, perhaps there's a habit of overworking. So we kind of overwork as a way to justify our success and perhaps to avoid the criticism or the envy of others. Being a hard worker shows commitment and follow through, unless we are burning ourselves out trying to prove our worthiness, right? Or maybe we're over responsible. Maybe we take on unnecessary burdens and we're excessively responsible to feel in control, respected, and needed. But being responsible and dependable can create safety and stability, sure, but unless it stems from fear, unless it is stemming from fear of vulnerability, or we're trying to induce dependency to boost our own self-esteem, right? Then we might have a habit of being over analytical. So having an analytical approach to things, particularly love, sometimes can kill the natural chemistry, and it can turn relationships into a performance review. So an analytical mind is super useful unless it is preventing us from taking risks and opening up emotionally, right? So I want to take a pause there. How many people can relate to this? Anything on this list that you can see yourself in or that you identify with? Just give me a little thumbs up in the chat or a yes, so I know that I'm on target with my audience here. Now, if you can relate to this, this is what I call the success-driven heartbreak cycle. Okay. And the success-driven heartbreak cycle is a paradoxical loop in which we have highly accomplished individuals find that the traits that are driving their success can become their obstacles in their love lives because they can be rooted in early attachment wounds. These strengths evolved as coping skills to satisfy a need to earn love. And this is an expression of what I call hungry love. So inadvertently, these coping skills create kind of a barrier that keeps genuine emotional connection just out of reach. And it's a cycle that tends to trap us in this pattern of getting a lot of insight, but experiencing very little change or improvement as a result of it. Now, I believe that the good news is that we don't have to abandon our strengths at all. It took us a long time to acquire those. It's just learning how to source that energy from a different place. So instead of from a fearful inner child or a hyperprotective part, right, hypervigilant protective part, instead of from those places, rather from our spiritual core self. And then once we do that, now we actually create space and room for that inner child to offer us, and the protector parts to offer us their gifts, right, rather than their burdens. Okay. All right. So I'm seeing some responses. Overly responsible. Yep. Yes, I'm overly analytical, gracious, and rejecting compliments. Thumbs up. Yes, absolutely. Okay, good. Thank you for sharing that. So I just want to give you an example of how this can play itself out. So we have Cynthia. And Cynthia grew up with a functional alcoholic for a mother who was loving, but permissive and unpredictable in her mood swings. And so Cynthia became kind of a little parent to her siblings to compensate, and then grew up to become a successful lawyer. However, after 10 years in her field, she was feeling burnt out and spiritually arid. And so she saved up enough money to give herself a break while pursuing a career change. And during that time, she dove into self-help and new age spiritual practices. She would attend every yoga class in a 5-mile radius from her home. She changed her diet to include various food restrictions and just voraciously consumed online classes while attending workshops, retreats, and other events. But she could not seem to touch the emptiness she felt inside, and this manifested as a desperate yearning for a romantic partner. Now, the reality is all the long hours and frantic energy that Cynthia used to spend on court cases and client meetings was now being burned on yoga and spiritual retreats. So it was the same energy, just in different packaging. And so a part of her still felt that need to prove herself through exhaustive efforts to earn and deserve her right to love and to feel as though she was worthy of it. Now, does any of that sound familiar? Right? And so in learning to connect to our spiritual core and meet the needs of our inner child, this is how we unlock its gifts. And this is how we make way for that kind of soulful intimacy that I've been talking about, right? And once we accomplish that, now emotional support, vulnerability, reciprocity, and love. This comes from a place of free will and generosity rather than a need to find relief from fear, satisfy our insecurities, or even validate worthiness concerns, which again is what I call being in a state of hungry love. Okay, so today we're going to explore these themes through the PATH framework. And so the PATH framework stands for Purge Limiting Beliefs, Awaken New Realizations, Transform Your Perspective, and Harmonize with Spirit. Okay, and so we're going to do an exercise together that walks us through each one of these phases. So first, we're going to take a look at purging limiting beliefs. So first, I want to introduce you to this premise that anything you want because you think you will feel better in the having of it. And a feeling is energy moving through your body. And so a limiting belief is a negative idea or energy that pinches off the flow and obstructs whatever you want, whatever your next aligned action step might be in the direction of what you want, right? It doesn't give you access to it. This is where things are going to get a little more interactive. And so in the chat box there, I'd love you to just complete this sentence on the screen. I want what? So I can feel XYZ, which must mean I need what? I see some responses. Driving into self-help and healing has always felt like a shift in my coping mechanism rather than true healing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Kyle. I want affection so I can feel loved, which must mean I need validation. So I might switch those around a little bit. I want affection so that I feel validated, which must mean I need love. I want to belong so I can feel valued, which must mean I need love and acceptance. Great. I want to feel loved so that I feel wanted, so that I can, which must mean I need security. Sure. Yeah. So there's no right or wrong way to do this, but this is just one way to kind of sift and sort through what's this desire, what's this hunger that I have, and how can I start to clarify those things by understanding my wants, my feelings, and my needs. Right? So again, anything you want because you think you'll feel better when you have it. A feeling is energy moving through your body. So generally speaking, when we can focus on the energy we want to feel rather than the object that we have attached that energy to, we can manifest that experience a bit more quickly in our lives. However, if we are overly attached to the object or to the material manifestations of the energy that we want to feel, usually this reveals something about the limiting beliefs that we carry and about why we can't or don't have what we want and need already, right? So these can sometimes be external or internal reasons or both. And that can include beliefs about reality in general, beliefs about our capacities as individuals, and so on. So the next part here, the easiest way to identify our limiting beliefs is simply just to finish the sentence. Well, I can't or don't have what I want because. I can't have or don't want, or I can't or don't have what I want because. So why do you think you can't or don't already have what you want? And as I said before, it can be external reasons. It could be pertaining to things you can't control. There could be internal reasons. Maybe there's a doubt about your own capacities, or perhaps you have some emotional hangups. It could even be a feeling of confusion. Well, I don't know why I can't or don't have what I want already, right? All right. I don't deserve it. The world is against me. Push-pull dynamics. Yeah. Over-analysis that keeps me closed off. Wow, such wonderful and deeply reflective answers. Fear of abandonment. We're also advanced in here, too closed down, don't have the skills. Yeah. These are great. Because the world, yeah. Fear of being hurt again, sure. I can't or don't have enough income because I need to also maintain balance in health and self-care. Okay, yeah. So then that lets us know that there's a limiting belief about balance. I can't or don't have what I want because I need to work on emotional availability and voicing my needs. Great. So sometimes there can be a limiting belief that unless I have figured it out, then love can't come to me. I don't deserve it. Yeah. That's usually a core one. I can't have what I want because my family relies heavily on me. So usually there's some underlying those are usually indoctrinated beliefs about what you owe family and what their obligations are or are not. I don't know what I want. Sure, it can be confusion. Yep, these are great. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay. Now, a lot of our negative limiting beliefs can be boiled down to a few core ideas, right? So we can start peeling back the layers on some of our beliefs. And sometimes these core ideas are pretty visceral and primal. They sound kind of like, I am just fundamentally bad, sort of like, I don't deserve it. That can kind of go along with that one. I'm powerless, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'm not enough, I'm invisible. Another one I tend to hear a lot is, I am unique in my suffering. And each of these ideas really kind of amounts to this one painful belief, which is I'm separate. And so when we believe that I'm separate from divine source energy, we are prone to these ideas and other ideas that spring from them. And we wind up making decisions that reinforce an original storyline or an experience that caused us to perceive ourselves as separate in the first place in a negative way. And so these limiting beliefs are often also originally conceived with whatever our cognitive abilities and resources were at the time that they were conceived, which means that they are usually relatively immature in nature, and they're carried by our wounded inner child, right? So this aspect of ourselves that becomes constellated around that belief. Now, sometimes limiting beliefs can also be hard to identify because they are blended together. So for example, my client Katie wants love and affection, and a part of her believes that a relationship is the only way to get it. And this is likely to be a perception of her inner child. But another part of her also believes that romantic relationships demand too much of her emotionally and that they always wind up hurting her in the end. So she should avoid them. And this is likely to be more of a protector part that is blended with that inner child. So there are really two beliefs that are fused here with these blended parts. And we need to unblend them so that we can unburden them. So for example, Katie wants to feel love, but she believes, number one, a romantic partner is the only way to feel loved. And beneath that, number two, but romantic partners aren't safe. And so now we see that she's really caught between a rock and a hard place. And so unpacking this is really what it means to awaken to a new realization. So here we are, we're going to step into the next phase of this, which is all about awakening to new realizations. So we have to awaken to the realization that this conflation between romantic partners and love keeps Katie stuck in this confusion and frustration state. Because if romantic partners aren't safe, then that means love isn't safe. And so there's no way to safely experience love. And even if her ideal mate showed up at the door tomorrow, she would not be able to let the love in because that is a threat to her safety and existential survival. This also means that she probably has little to no model for understanding what it means to love yourself as well. And so this helps us to realize that no matter how much Katie throws herself into personal development or follows all the best dating advice she can find, unless we are unraveling these blended core assumptions, nothing is going to really change, energetically speaking, in her unconscious mind or with regards to what I'm going to call her magnetic point of attraction. And so if she's doing all this work to avoid feeling pain, then she's likely going to attract more pain because she's still operating under these conflated assumptions, which means that she's likely to continue to attract people or scenarios that reinforce these blended beliefs. So avoiding pain creates pain. So imagine let's say we'll imagine Katie as a teenager and she went through her first breakup and she felt really sad, and this core idea became installed that breaking up hurts. And perhaps that was when she decided that relationships were hard and love required some measure of pain and suffering. And so she began avoiding deeper relationships to escape the possibility of inevitable failure and sadness. And so now she becomes attracted to situations that create a lot of drama and distraction, which means that it's never really safe enough to open up on a deep emotional level. And so ironically, this avoidance of pain now brings a different kind of pain from feeling isolated and disconnected and missing out on the joy and support that new relationships and experiences might have been able to provide her. So what do we do now? Well, we have to transform her perspective, right? And that leads us to that next step. How are we going to transform this perspective? So if we can get these parts, these parts that hold these blended beliefs to connect to Katie's spiritual core or higher self and experience love in a more transcendent fashion, then she can begin to experience love in safer ways, which debunks this belief that it is only accessible through a romantic partnership. And it also deconstructs the idea that love is unsafe altogether. And so instead of feeling subject to the world, offering up uncontrollable and rare opportunities for love, now she can adopt the attitude that love is quite common and ubiquitous, and her only job is to get better at discerning the most compatible version of it with a suitable partner, which is an ability that evolves through developing greater self-knowledge, self-trust, and personal resiliency, all of which she actually has tremendous amount of control over. So in other words, transforming our perspective usually means adopting new, more expansive and optimistic beliefs about love in general, and its accessibility, and then introducing those ideas to the inner child and the protective parts. And so in my course, Hungry Love, we use EFT tapping scripts and techniques in combination with some powerful affirmation statements to do this. So for example, like Katie, a lot of my students deep down struggle to receive love without feeling like they have to work hard for it, to earn it, or to deserve it. They also struggle to let go of the idea that healing has to be difficult or painful in order to be effective. And they often carry a sense of urgency around the whole process, kind of voraciously chasing after an ingenious moment of insight or a slap in the face experience that's going to change everything for them overnight, right? But what if we believed that love was just our natural state? What if healing could be approached as a fun opportunity to recover playfulness, creativity, and an expanded sense of purposefulness and personal power in our lives? What if we could simply allow ourselves to trust the process and have faith that things are getting better without working them so hard, right? So Katie might transform her perspective into adopting a new belief statement like this. Love is not a scarce resource to be earned or sought out. It is an abundant and inherent quality within every individual and surrounding us in a larger collective consciousness and energetic field. And by reconnecting with my spiritual core, I can experience the transcendence of love in a more holistic and secure way. Therefore, love is my natural state. I need not wait, search, or yearn for love because I am love and I carry it with me everywhere I go. Healing is a joyful, exploratory, and creative journey. It allows me to unfold into the brightest luminescence of my eternal spirit, enhancing my intuition and my skills as a masterful manifester of my physical reality. I have faith in the unfolding process. Things are improving behind the scenes without excessive effort, and each moment of conflict or contrast sharpens my capacity for greater discernment, guiding me to make choices that are aligned with my soul's curriculum in this lifetime. Okay, so let me know in the chat box, is any of this resonating with you? Did any of that strike a chord? Do you feel as though these are beliefs that you might want to adopt in your experience as well? Let me know in the chat. And now we're going to hand it over to you once more. Okay. So for a moment, I'd like you to reflect on what you want, what might have been some of the limiting beliefs that you identified around that, and what new perspective might you need to assume in order to create room for more love in your life, more of what you want in your life, right? You might think of this as a more optimistic or expansive belief that directly releases the constrictions around your limiting beliefs and would make room for, let's say, your inner child to play, right? And to feel more connected. And so to do this, I just have you complete the prompt here. A new perspective I might adopt could be, right? Or a new perspective I could adopt might be, right? Love is all over the place. I love that. Avoiding pain only causes more pain. Yeah. I'm glad that resonated. So what are some new perspectives that we might adopt here that could create more room for our desires to come in and soften some of those limiting beliefs? And so I'd have you just jot a few of those down. And once we have a couple examples in the chat, we'll keep going. I am love. I love that. Yeah. I am love. What I've been searching for is me and is in me. Love that too. I can have everything I want when I direct myself to it. Ooh, love that agency. Yeah. Very good. Do one more. That I already am deserving of being loved. Yes. I love talking about this idea of deservedness because it's such an ego construction. The rock does not justify its stillness. The wave does not ask for permission to crash against the shore. And the sun does not earn its right to rise to its summit every day, because these are all aspects of nature. And so too are you an expression of nature, and you need no justification. Worthiness is an ego construction. It's just beside the point. So that's why sometimes when I hear people say affirmations like, I am worthy, it's a step along the way, but usually eventually you'll arrive at a point where you realize I'm not worthy because I'm not worthy, because there's no way I could ever be unworthy. So worthiness is just irrelevant to the whole conversation, right? Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for sharing these things. All right. So how do we arrive at truly believing, embodying this new kind of perspective or these new, more expansive beliefs in love? Well, we have to experience it in a deeply personal way, right? And we translate this through in a emotional vocabulary that is distinctly yours. And in my work as a creative arts therapist, that vocabulary is symbolic, it is metaphorical, it is sensorial, and it is spiritual. So in other words, we invite this new perspective to harmonize with spirit. And that is what we explore in our last step. And that is what our experiential activity is going to be focused on here today. So I invite you now to pull out your pencil and paper if you haven't already. And we're going to do a little creative activity here. So I'm going to pull up a little diagram on the screen. And I invite you on the page there to draw the triangle. And at the top, I would have you label it your wants. So you can either just write want, or you can write out the whole desire statement that you wrote at the beginning of our presentation. And then at the bottom, you're going, one corner is going to be the limiting belief. So you can just write limiting belief, or you can write out the belief that you want to work with today, or both. And then on the other corner, you're just going to write behavioral response, or you can just write behavior, right? So how does this manifest behaviorally? So Katie's want is, I want love. The limiting beliefs are, but love only comes through romantic partners, and romantic partners aren't safe, right? And so how does that affect her behaviorally? Well, she might seek out love from people that are unattainable, so she doesn't have to feel threatened, or she'll close up when love gets too close, right? Other iterations of this are, sometimes people will say, well, I find ways to work hard to prove that I'm lovable. And if there is an absence of a way, if I can't prove that I'm lovable, then I worry that I don't have a right to love. And sometimes, depending on how severe the attachment wounding might be, beneath that, there's a fear that I don't have a right to exist. Sometimes we work really hard to prove our worthiness because we don't really know if we have a right to be here unless we're proving our right to be here, right? And so in the center of that triangle, I'd like you to try to identify what is the core driving belief beneath all of that. You know, and oftentimes it's usually like, I'm not worthy, right? Or I'm invisible, or I'm unlovable, or I'm helpless, I'm too much, I'm not enough. There is usually like a 1 or 2 word core belief beneath that kind of fuels all these other sort of secondary beliefs that evolve from it. Okay. And then once you've got it, and don't think too hard, usually it's the first thing that comes to mind is the right thing. Then once you've got it, now I'm going to have you pull out your markers, your crayons, your colored pencils. And what I'd like you to do is, right on top of those words that you just wrote on the page, I'd like you to express the energy. So in my case, I wrote, I'm not worthy. So what color, what energy does that create inside of me when I think about it? And what color might that be? Right? If there was a shape, what shape would it be? If there was some texture, what kind of texture? Would it be dotted? Would it be crisscross? Would it be zigzags? Does it take up the whole page? Is it tight and tangled and constricted? Does it have any kind of movement? Is it blurry? Is it scratchy? Is it really dark and you have to work your hand really hard? Or is it soft and sketchy and it's really shy and delicate and kind of afraid to make a mark? And I'd like you, just with your drawing materials, just scribble on top of that core idea that we identified to depict the energy in a creative way. When you create an image or a symbol, or you externalize something and you make marks around it, you create a container for it, metaphorically and literally. And so this means that now you're starting to draw lines around an energy. And once you draw lines around an energy, it doesn't have the same power anymore, because now you have a method by which you can organize that energy. And somewhere on that page, I'd like you to also write down, what was the potential transformative belief and perspective that this energy might be able to adopt in order to harmonize with spirit. So for example, in Katie's case, it might be, love is my natural state and I take myself wherever I go, right? So what might be the more transformative or optimistic or expansive belief that you may want to adopt in order to shift something about this energy? And I want to add, our goal here is not to eliminate this energy. Our goal here is to befriend it so that we can understand how it believes it's serving you. And then we can shift its perspective so that instead of working against you, its gifts can work for you. And this is how we start sourcing our strengths from that place of abundance as opposed to that place of fear, urgency, overworking, hungry love, right? And so now we're going to step into that phase of harmonizing with spirit. And I'm going to walk you through a guided visualization. And I invite you to just kind of gaze at your drawing there for a minute to sort of take a snapshot of that energy and the way that you envision it in your mind, because we're going to be working with that energy. And once you feel like you've got a good picture of that in your mind, I invite you to find a comfortable spot. You can do this seated or lying down. Just make sure that you feel supported. Okay. If you're operating heavy machinery, I'd invite you just to sort of, listen, but maybe participate at a later date with the replay. So take a breath. We're going to turn our attention inwards. Just noticing that with every inhalation, there is an opening up of the lungs, an opening up of the heart, an opening up of the ribs. There is, in fact, a spaciousness that grows inside of you, a vastness that exists inside of you, and there is plenty of space for you. And this vastness is both empty and full. Empty enough for all of you, and yet full of light and love and the essence of pure love. And so for today's practice, we are going to start with a little bit of grounding. I'd like you to imagine dropping your awareness down to between your hips and below the navel, almost as if you're planting the seed of your intention here for today. Imagining that seed sprouting roots and extending down the length of your legs, down past the soles of your feet, down through the floorboards of your home, down through the foundation of the building, down, 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 down through the layers of rock and crust and soil, all the way down, 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 down to the earth's molten core. And there, Mother Earth is so glad you came. Ooh, she's been waiting for your invitation, and she takes your roots and she wraps them around her core. And she sends up all of the nourishing energy and grounding support you might need for today's practice. And so as you take your next breaths in, just imagine drawing up all that nourishment up past the soles of your feet, up past your ankles, up past your shins, your calves, your knees, up past your thighs, up past your buttocks, and breathing it into your pelvic region, flowing into what I call your sacred bowl, really grounding you in your center of gravity. And so we are nice and rooted and supported and held in the bottom. We are open and expanding in the middle. And now we're going to rise up to your crown and your third eye, which is that place in the center of your brow. And we're just going to open up the lid of your crown, almost like we're opening up a treasure chest or the kind of lid or container. And we're just going to set the intention for our higher aspect, helpers and wisdom keepers that are here in service of our greatest good and nothing else, to join us and to bear witness to our practice here for today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nice, solid channel. Very good. Okay, and so in the mind's eye, I invite you to call to your mind that image that you created on the page, right? The energy that you depicted. And for today's practice, I'd like you to imagine that that energy starts to assume a figurative shape. And it is going to depict an aspect of you. Now, perhaps it shows up as an inner child. It might show up as a protector part. It may show up as some other form or figure. But just noticing what kind of figure it assumes, what shape it assumes, how it shows up. And this will be the aspect that holds this energy the most frequently for you. And so very gently and lovingly, we're going to let this energy know that we are here to invite it on a pleasurable, getting to know you kind of journey. And this is a practice that is in support of its greatest good and the good of all. Nobody is trying to take away its job or convince it of anything. Instead, we are here to learn more about it and to ease its burdens. And so just wait for it to affirm that it has received your intention and that it is willing to go with you. And once we receive that affirmation now, we're going to look around the landscape of the mind's eye and locate a portal. This may show up as a door or a cave. It may be a hole in the ground. There will be a portal or a threshold of some kind. And so we will approach that portal now. And beyond the threshold, there will be a staircase. And we will descend 10 steps down this staircase into the heart. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so here now we step into the heart chamber with this aspect by our side. And you might just take a quick look around 360 degrees, just noticing, how does your heart present itself to you? What is the weather like in there? Noticing its qualities and its nuances. And so now I'd like you to locate here in the heart your divine spark. And it will be there. There will be a spark of illumination. This represents your life force energy, your divinity, that which animates you in your body in this lifetime. And so we're going to locate that divine spark or firelight right now. And once you've got it, on your next breath in, just imagine that you're breathing into that spark. Almost like blowing on a hot coal. Every breath gives it a little more life and vitality. And it grows bigger and brighter. And that spark starts to fill up your heart with warmth and love and a brilliant white golden light. And as it does so, it reaches out for and it cradles this constricted energy, this aspect that came along with you. And it offers it love, compassion, and ease and nourishment. And notice now how this figure responds. And that there's plenty of permission for this part to relax and to receive that support. We've taken care of all of its burdens for right now. It can just relax for a minute. And so this divine aspect is going to inquire with your part, what color does it need in order to release its burdens? What color does it need in order to release its burdens? And so observe now the way it responds. What color comes to mind? What's the first instinct you have? And so on your next breath, summon up endless supply of this color. You have an unlimited access to that. And so now you and this divine spark are breathing in unison, and you are calling up as much of that color as is required. There's no shortage of it. And now we are going to send this color into that part. We're going to breathe it in. And so just take a few breaths like this, really diffusing that color into this part, letting it take all it needs. And just notice how this figure, this energy starts to relax, to unfold, to untangle. Maybe it starts moving, responding in a different way. Just be aware of any shifts and take note of it. Continuing to breathe this color in. And you will know that this part has become satisfied and unburdened when the color shifts again. Maybe it is back to that warm golden white light, or maybe it's to a different color. But that shift lets us know that we've done some work here. This shift also lets us know that a transfusion has occurred. This aspect is more deeply connected to you and to your divine spark now. Its gifts are your gifts. There's more flow, there's more ease, there's more love exchanged between you, unboundaried and unblocked. And so take a few breaths to really enjoy that. This is a pleasurable thing. And so take a few breaths, knowing now that you are this divine spark, you are this healed aspect, and you are something else and something more than all of this combined as both cosmic observer and worldly participant. Very good. Nice. Very, very good. Yeah. Now you might feel tears come up. There might be a sadness that comes up. All of it's correct. All of it is letting you know there's energy moving. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nice. Okay, so you might take a breath and just release it with a sigh. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And take a snapshot of that experience and that witnessing in your mind, letting the experience sink into your heart, beating to the rhythm of your heartbeat from your crown to your toes, from your fingertips to your nose, just allowing this experience to become a form of cell memory and body knowledge. Knowing and trusting that what you have enacted today is something that will continue to work its magic behind the scenes without any efforting from you. And in time and throughout your experience, there are synchronicities that will rise in your day to day, and there will be deeper wisdoms that emerge to inform your understanding. And if you are called to action in the future, you will know what to do. And so now we can allow this image to take a step back for now. And we're going to return to our staircase once more, this time ascending 10 steps into the mind's eye again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And so we cross the threshold again here, stepping into the landscape of the mind's eye. And we're just going to seal up our lid, closing our lid now, making a nice, clean, safe, tight energy field, nice, safe container, knowing and trusting that our wisdom keepers and our higher self and aspects are always there to help us if needed. And for now, we're going to keep our roots nice and grounded and connected so we can access that resource throughout the rest of our day. And I think we'll keep our heart nice and open and allow that to kind of to digest and simmer throughout the rest of your day. And so now we're going to start coming back into the room, back into the present moment. And I'm going to count backwards from 5 to 1. And when we reach 1, we'll release the practice in full with a nice big sigh. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Very good. And so as it feels comfortable and natural for you to do so, you can start opening your eyes. You can start coming back into the room. You might find yourself yawning. This is a sign that you've released some energy. You might find yourself feeling tearful or more vulnerable. There might be a sensitivity that's come up, and this is all a good sign that you've shifted something. And so I invite you just to take a moment or two to jot down a few notes about what you experienced. What did you notice on your journey? What shifts did you witness or experience? And let's give that a few minutes. Mhm. And so I would invite if anybody would like to share what their experience was like in the chat. I'd love to see that too. You're certainly welcome to share. And so certainly if you're continuing to write and to reflect, I encourage you to continue doing that. In the interest of time, I'm gonna keep going forward. So I make sure we get our presentation into this time together. I feel sad about losing that part. So that's an interesting thing too, so the part is not lost. We're never losing any parts, right? We're just shifting they're transmuting. It's sort of like the laws of matter, right? Matter cannot be created nor destroyed. It is only transformed. So if there's a part coming up that feels sad, another part that's coming up that feels sad or perceives that part as having been lost, now you kind of have a sense of direction where to go next, right? So maybe that part was blended with it. Maybe there was some connectivity between two parts, and you managed to harmonize one aspect of that part, but there was a blended piece to it that didn't quite or wasn't quite addressed in this activity, in which case then I would look at the sadness. Where does the sadness live in my body? What color, shape, texture does that energy have? What are the beliefs that are connected to that energy? What are the wants that fuel those beliefs? What's a transformative way of perceiving this that might help shift that energy, right? So I kind of offered one right here, which is you didn't lose the part. The part was promoted, right? The part graduated. So how now do we get the part that feels sadness to understand that and transform its perspective, right? So you can see it is a practice. It's a muscle, that it is and the ease with which we can go through practices like this evolves in time and with practice, right? But it's all super good information, and that's really good information. It's telling you where to go next. So this is the path framework. So today we kind of went on a lightning speed. With lightning speed, we went through the path framework. We looked at how we might purge limiting beliefs, awaken to new realizations, transform our perspective, and harmonize with spirit. And again, this is the framework that we use in my live group coaching program, Hungry Love Masterclass. And the enrollment for that program is open until the 30th, so 3 days from now, for those of you that might be interested in joining us. And so this is an advanced group coaching curriculum for spiritually minded individuals who want to transform their limiting beliefs, release and transform blocked energy on the body level, and learn these types of strategies for healing the inner child. And in this course, we utilize things like art therapy techniques. We also have some guest presenters teaching us about structural integration, somatic work, breath work, EFT tapping, and shamanic journeying. We also connect to spirit guides, animal totems, and other wisdom keepers. So this is very much, attachment psychology, but with a new age and mystical twist. So if that's something that piques your interest, I would love to invite you into our program. And practically speaking, it's 12 lessons, and we conduct those lessons over the course of 4 months. So we meet every week for about an hour for 4 months. The first 3 weeks of the month, we do curriculum coaching in a space like this together. In the group, we also do like breakout rooms. So you would be connecting to others. We would be giving a lot more time to process, right? So a lot more time to process. And you would be given the pre-recordings for each lesson a week in advance. So when you come to a call like this, you would have already read the lesson, watched the recordings, and then we would process together. And so these 12 lessons make up the whole of the path framework. So When we look at purge limiting beliefs now, we would slow things way down, and we would be getting into the nitty-gritty of naming our desires. We'd be getting into the nitty-gritty of limiting beliefs and the different types of limiting beliefs that come up, and connecting with our inner child in that first phase. And so then in the awakening to new realizations, this is where we uncover what's that core belief. Remember, we touched upon it in today's activity. And then we would practice holding big feelings. So in other words, we start measuring that window of tolerance, is what they call it in trauma-informed practice. But we start looking at what's the energy moving through my body when I feel triggered, right? And how can I create that rubber band so that I can be comfortable with uncomfortable feelings, which then paves the way for being able to unburden our inner child, right? And then we focus on transforming that perspective by scripting a new belief or a new story, kind of like the one I offered an example here today. In this phase, we do that with EFT tapping techniques. We also connect to our spirit guides or wisdom keepers to inform what it is that we are transcribing. And then that allows us to set more what I consider to be soul-aligned goals with the things that we are seeking or wanting. And so then in the harmonize with spirit phase, this is where we connect to a spirit animal. We deepen our bond with nature, and then we tap into the benefits of archetypal consciousness. And so this is what allows our inner child to embrace that authentic, playful side and inspires that integration of the mind, body, and spirit. And this is when we really step into more shamanic approaches to healing. Okay. So these are presented in a very intentional way. So for example, unless we're clear about what is the deeper spiritual lesson, looking at where my desire stems from, unless we dig into that, then the successes that we do experience tend to feel empty, and usually they tend to go up and down really quickly. Unless we're able to identify whatever the root pain is, that core belief, the fundamental belief on which all other limiting beliefs are kind of stemming from, then these limiting beliefs continue to remain somewhat obscured, and they continue to filter our reality. Unless we are able to adopt that new perspective and the new beliefs that we might adopt with it, our insight almost perpetually remains in a state of double troubles when we're anxious about how anxious we are, worried about how worried we are, depressed about how depressed we feel, right? Because we haven't adopted a new way of processing that information. And unless we can install these new beliefs through embodied and creative ways like we experienced here today, then nothing really changes, and we tend to remain stuck, usually in that kind of spin cycle in our heads. Like we have all this mental energy and we have nowhere for it to go, right? So these stages are offered in a very sequential way, and now that you've experienced it, you can kind of have a sense of why they are that way. Now in the program itself, we do have 4 guest presenters joining us. Jessa brings to bear a wealth of knowledge in structural integration and somatic work. With Jessa, she walks us through a demo of how to activate the body nonverbally, particularly during the attachment years, whatever stuck energy might be there. Then Andrea brings to bear 2 presentations on breath work for activation and release. So a lot of times people think that they use breath work to calm themselves down, but sometimes we can use breath work to activate and help us to lean into whatever it is that we need to let loose. And so this is what Andrea guides us through. Then Linda joins us towards the second part of the presentation or the program with an introduction to past life regression. So if you are someone who is interested in things like that, Linda brings a special presentation towards that. And then in Harmonizing with Spirit, guest presenter Kristen Von Fox, who is a shaman, comes and does a shamanic soul journey for us to integrate and install these new beliefs that we're adopting. And so overall, as I said before, we will be meeting for 1 hour a week, 4 weeks, for 4 months. The first 3 weeks are curriculum coaching. And then the 4th week is when we do our bonus presentations. And I consider it like a catch-up week. So if you need to catch up on anything, you can also use that time to do that. It does include 2 1-hour private coaching calls with me when you enroll. And you do have the option to add on more later if you want to. And again, enrollment closes on the 30th. If you have questions, you can also, and you'd rather not ask them in the chat, you can also email us at support@briannamcwilliam.com, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. So I hope you enjoyed today's workshop. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me here today. I so appreciate you. And if you decide to join us in the program, I look forward to working with you in the future. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.